Hopefully everybody can see that now. And as you just experienced in real time, I'm going to put everybody on mute, just in the interest of minimizing inadvertent disruptions and keeping everything running smoothly. But hello again, and welcome to our latest session of BusinessWise Insiders. Just a quick overview of what to expect. I'll walk everyone through today's presentation. As I said, I'll keep everybody on mute during the presentation to keep things running smoothly. It should last maybe 20 or 25 minutes, after which we'll divide the group into breakout rooms where you'll have a chance to introduce yourself and ask questions or offer your own perspective on some of the ideas that we'll cover today. And each breakout room will include a few members of our own team here at BusinessWise, representing some mix of our three markets, Atlanta, Charlotte, and Dallas-Fort Worth. With that, why don't we get into today's topic. So today we're going to dig into the question of why should your prospects say yes to you, and offer some ideas about how to give your prospects a unique reason to engage, meet, and buy. And the question I wanted to start with today is why your unique value matters. And it might seem intuitive that people buy things that provide value, and that value is especially pronounced when it's one of a kind, when they can't get it from anywhere else. And all of that is certainly true. But if you think about the same concept a little differently, value is at the center of every trade or transaction, including the final purchase of a product or service, but also anytime you ask anyone for anything. And as a B2B sales rep, reaching out to prospects who may not know about you or your product, you ask a lot of your prospects. You ask them to take your cold call, you ask them to open your email, you ask them to respond to your voicemail or your email message, you ask them to spend time on a conversation or in an appointment with you. And of course, you hope ultimately to ask them to buy from you. So why should your prospect ever say yes to any of these requests? The only reason is that you offer something valuable in return for each of those yeses. And the most powerful reason is that you offer something unique that they haven't seen or can't get anywhere else. So the obvious next question is, how are you valuable and how are you different? And while the question may be obvious, the answer rarely is. If you've ever role played on a cold call or practiced an elevator pitch, you know how much even the smartest sales reps can struggle to come up with a concise and compelling answer to the question, why should I buy from you? And this may be especially true of experienced sales reps who know their product inside and out, since the natural tendency is to talk about your product's powerful features rather than what problems those features help solve for your prospect. So it's a good exercise to put yourself in your prospect's shoes and ask these same questions from their perspective. What do I get from taking this call? What do I get from opening this email? All the way up to what do I get from this product or service? And now think of your current cold outreach strategy and the various ways you ask for your clients and prospects the questions from the previous slide. Would you say yes to any of those requests if you were them? But let's take a step back for a second and spend some time with that last big question, which is why your prospect should buy from you, because that's really the ultimate statement of your unique value, and breaking down the answer will help inform how we approach the smaller questions that lead up to that point. And before I dive into that, I just wanted to invite Deborah to add any context she might want at this point.
What I would like to add is to encourage everyone to think about these questions and take them back to your colleagues and your management, and in a way to your clients and prospects, because these are some of the most valuable things or valuable answers that will help you formulate your best opportunities to get agreement and get the yeses with your prospects. They're not easy. They seem simple, but the why behind them is critical. And going over them and getting different ideas and then picking the best ones are going to really yield tremendous opportunities for you and your colleagues.
Right. And as I said, that big question is the one that really serves as the guidepost for your answers to all the small questions, because answering the question of your product or service's unique value really gets at how you help your prospects achieve their goals and address their priorities. Some of you may have heard of Dr. Flint McLaughlin and MEC Labs, but if you haven't, they're an organization that performs in-depth research into the science of marketing. And several years ago, Dr. McLaughlin came up with what he called the value proposition question. And the way I've framed it is to simply ask why your prospects should buy from you. But Dr. McLaughlin's value proposition question is another more precise way of prompting you to define your unique value. So you can see from the slide, it has 3 components that I'm going to quickly break down to illustrate the building blocks of a compelling statement of unique value that can serve as the engine of a successful business development strategy. So the first part is, if I am your ideal prospect, why should I buy from you rather than your competitors? So let's start with that first piece, if I am your ideal prospect. At BusinessWise, we're firm believers in the importance of a defined and focused target market. And it's not just because it's the best way to generate those higher value leads, the leads that represent prospects most likely to buy from you. Because just as your core business offering will help define your target market, it can work in reverse. Defining your audience can help sharpen your offering. So when you speak to a specific group of prospects with specific problems and priorities that you are uniquely positioned to address, your message will more effectively communicate the value that your company, product, or service provides to those customers. So you have people on the slide saying, we are your ideal prospects. We're the most likely to benefit from what you offer. When your value proposition speaks to us, your message more clearly communicates that value. So before you even start thinking about what you want to say, think about who you want to say it to. And we strongly recommend looking to your list of current clients as sort of a roadmap, since your clients are by definition those former prospects who decided to buy from you. And these are just a few questions you can ask about your current clients to guide you towards your ideal prospects. What do they look like? Are they small, medium, or large businesses? What industries do they represent? And what common challenges do they face? And coming up with those answers can really hone in on a group of prospects that stands to benefit from your offer and with whom your message stands to resonate. So that's part 1. Let's look at part 2. Why should I buy from you? And this is really the value piece of the value proposition. And the critical piece to emphasize here is that you're not the one who defines your value, because the value you're offering isn't some abstract thing that you come up with, and it really isn't about you at all. It's about your prospects and customers. They define value in terms of their own problems and priorities. And when they perceive value that meets their definition, they'll act. So you have the guy on the left saying, I don't really care about your product. He cares about what he's facing every day, which is his own challenges and priorities. So if you tell them how you'll help them solve those problems and achieve their goals, they'll have the reason to act. And if there's a common mistake that a lot of sales reps and marketers can't seem to avoid, it's that they talk about their own experiences, products, and services rather than the experiences, wants, and needs of their prospects. So we like to use what I call here the what's in it for me filter to help reframe these same ideas in a way that conveys value to your prospects. And in many cases, it's as simple as forcing yourself to communicate in the second person, starting a sentence with you rather than we or I. And you can see on the left, there are sort of 3 claims that we might make about BusinessWise when we're talking to a prospect, where we start with the first person. And then on the right, we're basically saying the same thing, but we started the sentence with a you. And as you can see, it turns that phrase that's about us on the left into something that is about solving a prospect's challenges or priorities on the right. So consider this in the context of setting that first appointment. When a prospect seems uncertain about why they should meet with you, you can say, you get new ideas on how to solve the challenges of a poor prospect pipeline. You get ideas on the levers to push to gain more first-time appointments with local hidden prospects. You'll discover this 30 secrets about national data. So it's a really powerful and easy way to turn something that might in concept be about you into a way to help prospects. And then now let's quickly look at the third part of the value proposition question. If you ended the value proposition question after that word you, if I'm your ideal prospect, why should I say yes to you? You might think you've done a pretty good job of defining that why, giving a prospect a reason to act and do business with you, but you'd be missing a critical piece because value alone won't get you as much business if your prospects can get that same value from somewhere else. So even if you give a prospect a reason to act and he can get it from somewhere else, that unique value can narrow down the choices to one, which is you. A quick way to illustrate this concept is just to ask whether your competitors can say the same thing as you are as you put together your value proposition. So for every claim you make about your product, ask yourself, can my competitors say the same thing? If the answer is yes, you might want to consider excluding it from your value proposition. So you get fantastic customer service, competitors can say the same thing. That makes for a weaker value proposition. Whereas you'll find and connect with your best prospects using locally researched data. Our competitors can't say that, so it's a stronger value proposition. And of course, sometimes there are industry standard features that are expected and therefore sort of a cost of entry that you may need to include in your value proposition. But the point is not to go overboard and to always explain things in terms of how your prospect benefits. Deb, did you want to add anything here?
I think one of the most important things here is the specificity of your claim. So having fantastic customer service is not very specific. Telling the story of how you helped that particular customer out of a jam can be very specific. And while it may not be universal, it paints a picture in your prospect's eyes that makes a much bigger difference than, yay, we have great customer service.
Right. And specificity gets to value in a different way. If it's broad and diffuse, the value is harder to perceive. Specificity might talk about a specific challenge or problem that your prospect has and therefore resonate more, even if it is something that a competitor can say. So that's the value proposition question and how we use it to answer that big question of why a prospect or customer buys from you. But now I want to turn to answering those smaller questions. So hopefully you've now started thinking about ways your company and product or service offers that unique value to your prospects or customers. And now we can use that answer and those ideas to extrapolate and start backtracking toward the earlier stages of the sales process and how unique value operates in that context. So going back to the questions from the beginning of the presentation, these small questions come much earlier in the sales process and represent critical hurdles in the effort to create prospect engagements that turn into leads and sales. And the answer to each question, as well as dozens of other similar questions that you might imagine arising throughout the process, represents its own mini value proposition that gives your prospect a reason to act. So I have a couple of different ways of illustrating this. And the first is, if you think about the big value proposition that we talked about in the last segment and wonder how it fits in with these smaller value statements, think about it as an umbrella value proposition that encompasses your essential answer to the question of why should prospects do business with you rather than your competitors. And that's your guidepost for the top line goals you help customers achieve, and you should always keep it in mind. Your mini value propositions then fit under that umbrella. And while they may not explicitly mention your product or service, they're all related since they get at the fundamental way that you help prospects and customers achieve their goals and address their priorities. So you can see underneath the umbrella, there's 6 questions that are similar to the smaller ones that we asked at the beginning of the presentation. And in fact, you can modify that value proposition question to help you customize your core value proposition for any given situation. So instead of, if I am your ideal customer, if I am a specific prospect, why should I take the action that you're requesting rather than some other action? And you can sort of play biz dev mad libs here and fit in any different combination of prospects, requests, situations, and offers to create a situation that you might need a value proposition for. So for example, if I am a prospect who doesn't know about you, why should I take your call rather than hang up? Or for the same prospect, why should I click on your email rather than delete it? Or if I'm a prospect who you've spoken with before, why should I agree to a meeting rather than end the conversation there and explore other options? And coming up with an answer to each of those questions can help clarify the value of taking an action short of doing business with you. And then just one more way to illustrate it. If you think of the sales process as a mountain where the sale is at the peak, your value proposition is the force that propels your prospect up and down that biz dev mountain, where at any point along the way, they could fall off and not reach the sale. So at every level, from sending a cold email to engaging on a cold call to setting an appointment, that perceived value must outweigh the perceived cost. And if it does, they'll continue that journey up toward the final question, which is why should they buy from you? Deb, anything you wanted to add?
You're good to go, Sam.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to step 3, which is where the most successful sales reps really separate themselves from the pack, and that's defining and deploying your own personal value during this process. So think again about the many things you ask of your prospects. Today, we've divided them up into sort of 2 general groups. You have the destination, which is the big question of why customers buy from you, and then the journey, which is all the smaller questions that pop up along the way. So ask yourself, what separates those smaller questions from the big question? And is it just a matter of when they occur in the sales process? And here's a hint. Think about where the value comes from in each situation. With the big question, the value comes in significant part from your product or service, because that's when they're deciding to pay you to get what you're selling. But that's not the case with any of the smaller questions because they haven't bought your product or service yet. The answer is really that it's not just your company, product, or service that provides value, you provide value too. So much of the value in the journey towards a sale comes from you as the sales rep. We talk about this often, but remember that your prospect need reasons to say yes, even if they never become a client. And similarly, in many cases, your prospects might be able to obtain the same basic products and services from your competitors. And the main differentiator in each situation is you, your ideas, and your experience. So to conclude the presentation, I'm going to throw 2 slides worth of questions at you. And there's a lot here, but I want you to think about your answers to each of these questions as we transition to the breakout groups. These are all designed to focus your mind on a couple of things. One is the importance, just this concept of the importance of adding value as a sales rep. And then the second is where to look to find the insights and ideas that you can provide that add value. So on this first slide, we have questions that I'm calling value proposition, self-reflection. They're all intended to emphasize the importance of adding unique value as a sales rep. And you can see there's some overlap, but do you believe you add value to the sales process from the very beginning, and how? Or a question we always like to ask, how do you answer the question, why should I meet with you even if I never become a client? To flip it around, why do you engage with sales reps who reach out to you? You might want to think about what is the difference between buying from you as a sales rep and buying without the help of a sales rep. You know, maybe a personal online research journey that a prospect takes that doesn't involve a human sales rep. Think about what insights, ideas, and experiences make you unique, because nobody has those same experiences and insights. And then thinking about what does value mean when your prospect doesn't even think they have a problem. Defining value, for helping them to define value when they might not even be looking for anything. And then quickly on the last slide, you probably all get it now. I need to add value through insights and ideas, but you might be thinking, what ideas and insights can I provide? So here are a handful of questions intended to get you thinking about the specific ways you already help your customers and that can translate in insights your prospects can benefit from. So what has changed in or shaped your client's industry over the past 1, 3, or 5 years? So question that you might be uniquely positioned to answer, whereas an individual prospector or client may not have the bigger picture that you do. What has changed in your industry that your client might not know about? Similarly, what forces will shape your client's future success that you can help address? And these are all, again, answers that you may be uniquely positioned to provide because you help multiple clients with these things. You see changes and trends in the industry, and you can provide recent insights that an individual client might not know about. One question that I really like is, if you couldn't offer your product as a solution, how would you help your client achieve better results? So that sort of forces you to take those features and benefits off the table and think about what you as an expert and authority on your subject matter would do to help your client or prospect. Again, how have you helped clients navigate technological transitions? What common challenges held your clients back that your prospects might not know about? What 3 questions would you recommend your prospects ask themselves or their managers to help focus on what's important, what might shape their future success? And then how can your perspective help change your client's perspective on their own business? Because reframing the problem can then uncover new sources of value that then you can help your clients and prospects address. So I know there's a lot of questions here. No need to furiously jot them down. We'll share the presentation with everybody after today's session. But do think about and use these to help guide your discussion in the breakout sessions. I think they're great ways to hone in on the ways you can provide value early in the process that give your prospects a reason to say yes. Deb, anything to add before we break up?
I was recently a panelist in, and the question was about the professionalism or lack thereof in salespeople. And as I'm looking at all of these questions, I'm thinking about the changes in what it means to be a B2B salesperson today versus many years ago when I began. And in a way, many years ago, we salespeople were human brochures, and our biggest job was to explain our products and services to our prospects. That has totally changed. Our prospects can find out the details of products and services online. So it's all about these questions that get into the importance of empathy with your prospects, understanding what's going on in the world and what are those challenges and how do they apply to our individual industries and to our clients. So our jobs haven't gotten easier. I certainly think it's more interesting today, but the challenges are great, and I'm interested to hear everyone's input on how you're coping with these challenges.
Well, thank you, Deborah, and thanks everybody again for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and begin the breakout rooms, and there may be a little bit of musical chairs at the beginning, but bear with us and we'll get started.